Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome, everyone, to the special event that we have planned for you today. And thanks so much for attending with us. I have the privilege of hosting this webinar and introducing you to our event speaker. My name is Mike Alshouse. I'm an account manager with Byteworks. For those that don't know us yet, Byteworks is an IT solutions company focused on solving problems that matter to you, and frankly, are often complex problems that a lot of others are not solving. You can see our focus areas within the IT ecosystem on my shared screen. We specialize in cybersecurity, enterprise networking, physical security, collaboration, data center, and wrapped under each of those specialty areas is a managed service that we offer. We partner with industry leaders like HPE Aruba to consult, design, and implement solutions. And today, I'm excited to bring you a subject matter expert in data center switching. Dan Radke is a product specialist for the Pensando product that we're going to be talking about today. And Dan is going to speak about a new-to-market product and how it is impacting organizations. So Dan will share what makes this particular switch so different from what else is on the market, who's using the product today, and what the ultimate impact is on the organizations that are using the tool. So after Dan and I are done talking today, you'll be taken to a 4-question survey. This will help us understand how and if the content today was helpful for you. We want to know if the content sparked any thoughts or ideas or questions that you want to discuss with us. Our hope is that this will be thought-provoking for you today and will help you better evaluate security in your data center going forward. So I'm now going to pull in our esteemed guest for today, Dan. So great to have you today with us, Dan. I really appreciate you being here. And just for the benefit of the audience, I'm going to fire some questions at Dan. This conversation, this interview is meant to be very informal. If anybody in our audience has questions or wants to contribute to the conversation, by all means, jump in and do it. So Dan, as a starting point here, as a level set for the audience, HPE Aruba has developed something really special here with this CX-10000 product. I personally have attended a number of HPE Aruba events in the last couple of months. This product seems to keep coming up to the top of many of these conversations. So just to start us off, I want our audience to know why this is such a big deal for the marketplace and really what makes this so different from what else is on the market today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. Aruba partnered with my company, Pensando, a small John Chambers startup company, and we built something that we think is pretty special. And so it is a top-of-rack switch in the data center that is providing stateful security services embedded within the network fabric of the switch itself. And you've got within the switch everything from encryption, firewall services, storage offload, telemetry, visibility, all of those capabilities embedded within the switch itself. To really talk about what makes the switch special, I think it makes sense to talk about who is Pensando. Pensando, I mentioned earlier, is that John Chambers startup. And we started after John retired from Cisco. The primary Cisco team that brought the Cisco Catalyst switch into Cisco and built the Nexus switch is this same team at Pensando. And what they started building was DPUs, ASICs, software on silicon. And so we were putting these NIC cards together for our big hyperscalers. So Microsoft Azure, Oracle Cloud, IBM Cloud, Google, Alibaba, all of those taking advantages of our services. And the reason was we had silicon that literally had a 10x performance improvement capability. And then we were able to onload software onto that silicon that gave us some of the functionalities that I described earlier. And that's a big deal for what we have today.
Excellent. That's really strong, Dan. And that's a good, technical start for us. Let's get into a little bit about the usage itself of the tool and a couple of the benefits of it. So can you talk about that for us? We'll next get into some use cases, but I want to give a little bit more of an introduction about the product itself and a few of the benefits.
Sure. So we like to describe this as a 4th generation switch. So if you think about the history of data center network switching, go all the way back to the 90s, and your first generation switch was a multi-protocol switch. So you had everything from Apple Talk and DECnet and IP, et cetera. And because you have all these protocols running, you couldn't enable things like layer 3 capabilities and so forth. And so until we got the protocol resolved, when IP won the protocol wars in around 2000, now you have the capability of adding layer 3 capabilities, routing capabilities into that. But keep in mind, back in 2000, almost all of your traffic is 100% north-south. So you've got a single app on a single server running from the bottom of that data center straight out and back. And so 100% of your traffic is running north-south. So then what big change happened that brought about the third generation is VMware around 2010. And you've got ESXi or vSphere capabilities. So now your traffic starts running server to server. vMotion capabilities up the amount of server to server or east-west traffic. 70–80% of your traffic in the data center is now east-west. And that explosion of east-west traffic did a couple of things. One, it prompted the creation of a spine leaf, underlay, overlay network traffics. And then the challenges that it brought were all of the security solutions now became bolt-on solutions. So you have your IPS IDS, you have your load balancer and your firewall. Everything sits off to the side, trying to manage the traffic running across that network fabric. And so what we've introduced is what we're calling a distributed services switch, building those security services into the network fabric itself. So I mentioned earlier that Pensando was really good at building ASICs. If you think back 10 years or so ago when Cisco was rolling out ASIC functionalities, the challenge was when you wanted to upgrade that ASIC, you had to replace the ASIC, or more likely the entire appliance that ASIC sat in. This one is customizable, programmable. And so it's just a software image upgrade and you get the new feature functionality of everything that we have. So this distributed services switch, the first of which is the Aruba CX10000 switch, is the top of rack switch with all of those functionalities baked into it. Everything from firewall services, 800 gig firewall in each and every switch, DDoS protection, NAT services, IPsec encryption, tunneling capability, all of that baked into the network fabric itself, no longer hairpinning out to a services stack and back.
Fantastic. I really like the way you laid that out, Dan. And I want to really emphasize this point to the audience, because this is what really resonated with me. And this is the conversation I'm starting to have with customers, is this traditional challenge of traffic being routed to the edge of the network to be inspected by a firewall. So what Dan said there, the firewall technology now being placed inside of this switch eliminates that flow of traffic out to the edge of the network. So the traffic is being inspected right there at the top of the rack where this switch is meant to sit. So that by itself is solving some problems. And Dan, let's lay out what those problems are. So those legacy solutions where the firewall sat at the edge of the network, what type of challenges did that present?
Yeah, so when you look at traditional inspection solutions, when you're looking at the challenges of inspecting that traffic, today you can do it in one of two ways, with software or with hardware appliances. If you're doing it with software, you're doing it with an agent on a server, and you're doing your best to inspect the traffic from that agent that sits on the server. There are several challenges with that. One, solutions like NSX, Guardicore, Illumio, they can be quite architecturally challenging and they can be quite expensive. As an example, NSX has an annual subscription cost. It's not only expensive in the first year, but it's a recurring expense that you have. There's also the challenge of I can't put an agent on each and every server in that environment. And so how do I solve for the places where I can't put an agent in that environment? SAP HANA is a good example. The other way to solve this problem is with hardware appliances. In a hardware appliance scenario, what you're doing now is you're hairpinning your traffic out to that firewall for inspection and then bringing it back. And so you're literally tripling the amount of data that's running across the network backbone, the data center backbone, just to approve that traffic from moving forward. This becomes architecturally complex, which obviously increases costs. And as a result, most people don't do it everywhere, if at all. And so those are some of the challenges that we've been trying to resolve. So now what we've done is bake that security services into the top of rack switch. So today you've got a perimeter-based firewall that sits at the edge of the data center. You want to keep that, and that's going to continue to manage the traffic that comes in and out of the data center. But the application edge of the data center, you don't want to take that traffic and send it all the way out to those other firewalls and then back for inspection. You can inspect the traffic locally at the application edge of the network. So the use cases that we're solving for the network guys, traffic visibility. So every network person wants to get better visibility or telemetry to the traffic they have. And now you'll get full visibility of every packet that passes through your top of rack switch before it even enters the network from the application side. And so all of that telemetry, and you're getting it either in full packet, net flow generation, IP fix, unsampled, so that you can see everything that's going through. From the security side, you've got firewall capabilities. So there's a huge use case of just taking advantage of the firewall that sits there. If each switch itself is 800 gig of firewall and you deploy top rack switch in a pair for active in VXLAN scenarios, you've now got a 1.6 terabit firewall for each and every rack within your data center. That is a huge firewall, and that capability for each and every rack is quite significant. So then you've got added on top of that DDoS protection. We've had some very large multi-tenant hosting providers come to us and say, we need NAT services. So we rolled out with the next image release NAT capability. So now if you've got overlapping local IP address space, you now can take advantage of the NAT services within the switch itself. And then finally, we had some large retail customers that came to us and said, I don't want it in a top of rack switch. I want to use it in my retail environments where I had a need for a switch and a need for a firewall. My final need is I'd really like to be able to build an IPsec tunnel back to my headquarters data center. And so we enabled IPsec tunneling capability, encryption capability within the switch. So now that switch can deliver over 1,000 tunnels, the largest of which is 100 gig. And so these are the capabilities. As our customers ask for more and more functionality, we roll it out. So you're future-proofing your network because the switch is software upgradable. You buy the switch over the next 2, 3, 5 years, however long you own the switch. As we come out with more and more functionality, and as our customers drive us on that roadmap conversation, you're future-proofing what you have because we'll continue to deliver more and more solutions.
That's a great point on the upgradable nature and future-proofing, Dan. I hadn't thought of that. I really like that, though. And the piece I want to go back to here is the expense. And we talked about it being a large firewall that would have to sit at the top of each rack. But of course, the expense component to this is massive. So that's the expensive nature of additional hardware that has to sit at the top of each rack. So from a cost perspective, with this CX-10000 product we're talking about right now, what should customers expect from a cost perspective? And the reason I'm bringing it up, Dan, if this product is as revolutionary as we say that it is it going to be too expensive for a lot of customers out there, for a lot of organizations, or has that been thought of? How is that built into the product?
Yeah, so we've priced this out to be pretty much the same price as any other top of rack switch from other manufacturers. So the list price of this switch is $55,000. Whatever discounting you get as a customer partner, drive that to wherever it should be. But most of our customers are walking out the door less than $30,000 for a top of rack switch with an 800 gig firewall baked in. We do not have recurring software subscription costs. So it's you buy it, you own it, and it's yours. There is traditional support and maintenance, just like you get with any other network appliance, but that should be expected. So we believe it's a very cost-effective, very low-cost solution, and we're delivering the easy button for how to deliver these policy-based services in the network.
That's good. Let's talk about how we bring this to life and what it looks like in the market today. So I want our audience to get a feel for who is using this. What are some use cases? So can you share a little bit with us about that?
I can. So I talked about the use case where the network guy gets visibility. The security guy gets to overlay firewall services or encryption services, NAT services. I talked about the use case where you've got a retail customer that said, I want to get tunneling back to my headquarters capability. So all of those capabilities are built in. I'm going to talk a little bit about our vision of the strategy of what we're trying to build here. So historically, you need to find a source of truth in the network environment. And that can be your taps from a Gigamon-like solution, or you can put out IDS, IPS, or firewalls in different subnets in the environment. Our vision is each and every network appliance becomes the source of truth. And then we can feed this into a data lake of sorts. And so we've not only built this in our lab, but we've helped a handful, half dozen customers build a solution very similar to this. So the idea being what we used was Kafka, and build a Kafka data lake where we can now publish all of our NetFlow or IPFix or firewall syslog traffic, whatever you want, in an unsampled matter into this data lake. You save it and store it as long as you like. And now your ecosystem partners, your tool farm, can subscribe to that data lake and take the traffic that they need from it. As an example, Splunk wants to get to IPFix, or your Palo Alto wants to get access to the firewall logs. All of that can be drawn back to those partners. So now I've given you a source of visibility, a source of truth in the network. And now with the machine learning capabilities that are coming out today, we're going to build this feedback loop such that if Palo or Splunk or someone else were to see something that they don't want to be within the network environment, something that raises a red flag, you can provide that feedback loop to have us also become the point of enforcement. Now with the firewall services, we have the ability to deny traffic for any workload, VM, app, subnet, however you choose to build within your world. And that becomes a continuous feedback loop. And so that takes the human nature out of the majority of network monitoring and network management for the tool farm that you have in your environment. So this is the vision and the strategic direction that we're going right now. We're building partnerships with all of those ecosystem partners in place today. So we already have full integrations with Splunk and Gigamon and a handful of other solutions, Octera. As an example, with what we've done with Guardicore, we have full integrations with Guardicore today, such that Guardicore traditionally uses an agent on a server for both telemetry and enforcement of traffic. But if you can't put that agent on the server, we can become that point of visibility and the point of enforcement, and Guardicore can manage the entire environment. And so those are the types of relationships we're trying to build, and the vision of where we have going with what we're trying to recreate for a fourth generation data center network.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. And I like the use case examples that you gave, and some of these benefits are outstanding too. What I want to do though, Dan, I want to pull us up a level and talk business outcomes for a second too.
Okay.
So for, decision makers, for the non-users of this product, let's talk about what those benefits look like. And the ones that I've heard you say already, we've talked about cost of ownership and that not being as high as what a lot of our audience would probably expect. We are also talking about security, enhanced security. Any other high-level business outcomes that we want to make sure we point out to the audience?
So it's an improved network performance. So you can lower the cost of your network by eliminating some of the secondary appliances, third-party appliances that sit off to the side that are bolt-on, if you will. And so by removing some of those, you improve the network architecture and then the overall cost of the network itself. So that comes back to the total cost of ownership as well. You're eliminating hairpinning across the network, and so that eliminates a significant amount of traffic on your network, which in default lowers the total cost of your network, because I now no longer need to have a large firewall or IDS on the side of my network. I don't have to have as large network equipment sitting there managing all of that traffic that's going back and forth, because now I'm limiting the traffic that stays within my rack, because I've got a firewall and all of my security services built in to each and every rack across my data center. So those are the things that you have so far. Consolidating your security tools, lower cost of ownership, more simple network architecture, which results in a greater network performance in the environment as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you took the conversation back to the performance part. You touched on that heavily, and that's a really important point for the audience. I want to talk about the markets here that make sense for this product, Dan. I don't want our audience thinking that this product is automatically not built for them because they have come in with preconceived notions on this. So let's talk size of organizations first. Large enterprises, is this the most ideal for large companies? Is it still a great fit for medium-sized companies that have a moderate level of IT resources, small businesses that are a little bit more limited in what they have in IT resources? Who is this ideal for, or is it all of them?
First, I'll talk the verticals that I think, and then I'll talk size of companies. So the verticals that have embraced this quickest and soonest have been healthcare, the universities, and the banking industry, finance. And I think it's because each of those verticals can't get enough security in their environment. So we're giving them another point of visibility and another point of enforcement within their environment. And so within healthcare, banking, and higher ed, the more security you offer, they've been a very receptive audience and they've jumped all over it. We've had a number of customers come to us and say, I've been trying to solve east-west traffic management for some time. NSX was too complex or too expensive, and I just can't get all of my traffic over to a firewall and back for management. So I end up putting a firewall in a subnet environment that I consider mission critical, and I leave the rest of it wide open. And so we're trying to make it available for everyone in the data center in that respect. With regard to who's adopted it the fastest, I would say it's the global nationals and the commercial space. So the very big ones and the very small ones. And it wouldn't be intuitive as why are the very small customers migrating to this product? In the commercial accounts, you almost always, your network and security guy is the same guy. And so he intuitively gets, I see the advantages of the network. I see the advantages of security. I want to take advantage of this in my environment. And it's not always a top-of-rack switch. This switch has been placed as a core switch, as a remote switch in retail warehouse environments and top-of-rack data center environments. But the commercial guys that do both network and security seem to get it really fast. In the enterprise, the mid-level area, when you've got a separate security team from your network team, that's where we've had our most challenges of introducing it, only because the security guy may get the vision of what we're doing, but the network guy has a different vision and it goes in different directions. And it's been our hardest sell because it's value for both of them. And so that's a conversation. In those cases, I like to have a conversation with a CTO or the network architect who sees the big picture and can drive this multi-faceted tool into their environment.
Okay, perfect. I think that lays it out for the audience really well, Dan. Thank you for that. Do you expect your competitors to be closely behind with a product offering like this?
I do. I fully expect in the next 12 months, multiple manufacturers to come out with a similar solution. And keep in mind, this is an Aruba switch, not a Pensando switch. Our capability is inlaid in there, but this is absolutely an Aruba switch sold by Aruba authorized channel partners and for Aruba customers. Aruba first rolled this switch out 2 years ago, October of 2021 in beta, announced it formally in January of 2022, and started shipping in late April, early May of 2022. So it's been in the market for over 18 months, which is a significant head start for Aruba.
Yep, it is.
During that time, our competitors have seen the capability, and I truly believe when I talk about this is the 4th generation capability, that same MPLS team, Mario Prem, Lucas Sony, that introduced the first 3 generations, albeit at Cisco, have introduced this 4th generation switch at Aruba. But yes, I absolutely believe our competitive switching providers in the marketplace will come out with a very similar solution in the next 12 months.
Okay, good for our audience to know. So Dan, at this stage, after you've introduced, the product and the benefits and the use cases to an audience or to a customer, what do you recommend they do next to get more? What is a good next step for folks that are listening to this now or will listen to it on demand? What's a good next step that you recommend for folks?
So we can do a deeper dive and go into the technology, go through the user interface, see exactly how easy it is to build a network or to build a security policy in that environment. We have demo units available. The switch itself has been shipping within 2 weeks of PO processing for the last 2 years. So we have not had the supply chain that some other switches have had in the marketplace. So the switch is available, shipping immediately. And as a result, we have demo switches available immediately for testing. So first step, I would say, let's do a little bit of more of a deep dive of your customer's specific architecture and see where it might be a good fit in that environment. We can go through the user interface so that you can get more of a comfort level of exactly what it would look like in your environment. And then if it is a good fit, we have demos available for you to kick it yourself in your own lab.
Okay, that's good. And I want to make it really easy for our audience to just initially reach out to me on this. So that's my call to action. I'm going to coordinate this back with Dan and the rest of his team to get the next steps moving. But to make it easy, if you reach out to me about wanting a bit more info or to get to that next level of a demo, please reach out to me to do that. So Dan, we are about out of time. This is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted to get through today. So I really appreciate you spending the time with us and our audience to talk about the product. I wanted to. Yep. And I want to remind our audience, you're going to have a couple of questions pop up on your screen once the session is done. That just helps us get a feel for if we hit the mark with this content today or if something else will be more value add for you in the future. So thanks to our audience. Thanks so much, Dan. Great content.
Thank you, Michael.
And we'll talk to you soon.